So today I finally have you in the hot seat on the receiving end of the questions. Zane, can you start off by telling us how Protea came into being? And this is one of my favorite questions because I just love the story. So if you could, just tell us how it came about.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not as interesting as you make it out sound to be. I started working for a winery investment company here in California in 2014. Took on a role sort of as an analyst, preparing models, mostly exit strategy type models for wineries. My now business partners had a few winery investments, and we were sort of sitting around in one of their apartments trying to consider, geez, how are we going to be able to keep up to date with the accounting books for these investments. They're mostly small, mostly in the startup phase, so price sensitive. And we looked out at the market, and we weren't very satisfied with what we saw. A large number of them were really expensive, which obviously didn't work. A large number of them just had really, really poor quality, and unfortunately, a lot of them were really, really expensive and had poor quality. So, jumping into that, we sort of needed to find an alternative, and we came up with the idea that I know a lot of really talented accountants back in South Africa that we could employ to help with the bookkeeping. I was fortunate enough from my university college days to know a few people who had the same qualification as me, as well as you as chartered accountants, that I knew had taken time off, most of them to be moms and had their kids in the early stages and wanted to return back to the workforce. So I reached out to a few of them. And we started off with myself and one person and, doing books part-time. It was just part of my job and sort of grew from there. And, for the first 4 years, we kept it really quiet, but was able to grow a nice base of clients. And, in March this year, we were 7 years old and flourishing. We have a team of 18 in South Africa, and there's 5 of us in the US. And the goal is to add at least one more to each continent within the next month or so.
Yeah, I think the growth is really, really exciting. But just coming back to, I love the way you describe it. It's very clinical. Like it just made so much sense. Was there ever any doubt? I mean, it's a pretty out there idea. You're sitting over there, the whole cross-continent thing.
Yeah, I mean, offshoring isn't a new concept, right? It's been around for a really long time, and the use of accountants in India, Philippines, Pakistan has been around for a while. What was a little unique and what we wanted to do was we're not using a third-party firm. We have our own wholly owned subsidiary in another country, and we hire people for life, and we sort of try bring people in to be part of our team, and they truly are part of our team. Part of the Protea family. And the idea is that, I have a hand in who we've hired. I make sure I talk to each person on a regular basis, making sure that everybody feels like they're part of the team, they understand the expectations. And then we put big focus on training and quality to make sure that we're providing our clients with the best possible work in the most consistent manner.
No, I think and it works. It's something that you and I have spoken about before, but I think one of the things that you've highlighted that is so key to the process working is trust, and having that trust. It's an inherent trust. So it comes in when you are, and I highlight this because we've seen now obviously with the pandemic, a lot of office-bound people now sort of being pushed into the work from home space. And in general, there is, out of sight and you're not working. There's a lot of distrust in the process, and I could see it just talking to people who'd been put into that situation in the early stages of the pandemic. And I always found that interesting because it does come down to trust. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we still trust is one of the most important things for managing any people. And, that's not just in a business environment, that's in a personal space as well. And if I can't trust you, then why are you part of my team to start with? My last, position that I had was in South Africa was very input driven, right? The people who did quotes well within the company with people who put in long hours. And I was one of those people. I've always sort of worked a lot of hours and just comfortable with that and just what I do. But, I always thought that there was a better way. And the thought of output-based monitoring of a team just is so much more important to me. I don't really care what's in your timesheet as long as you're being efficient and you're meeting your deadlines. So that I don't care when you're working or where you're working as long as the job gets done. And that's always been the focus of my management style, and just making sure that everybody understands that. Like, you'll get a trust as far as you want, and we'll let you get on with your job as long as you meet your deadlines and you communicate with people and sort of how you're progressing. So trust is critically important, and it's definitely be one of those key indicators of why we've been successful. We've trusted our team and they've trusted us, and it's sort of worked so far.
Yeah, no, fully agreed. I mean, and one thing, you mentioned one thing that I appreciate is the hands-on approach, the monthly check-ins, those regular calls just to touch base. Not as common as one would think or one would hope. So it's definitely a great value add. I think, being sort of, even though we are a dispersed team, sort of still having that hands-on engagement, which I think is really, really important.
Yeah, connections are really important. I hear it often in this current world where people are like, we really need to get back in person. You can't make real connections with people. And I call BS on that. I feel like I have strong connections with most of the team, and you can develop those. I'm developing them from 10,000 miles away, right? There's members in the team that I feel like I have a strong relationship with, but I've yet to meet them in person because they were hired after my last trip to South Africa in October 2019. It just doesn't mean that I have to meet you in person before we can have a relationship. And developing those relationships is by connections, and you create those connections by setting up regular check-ins.
Yeah, which I mean, and I think it is. I wish one would see more of that. Just in the business space, especially now with the sort of work from home being kind of the environment that we're all sort of thrust into and being kept in. I think and just thinking of work from home, one of the other big or sort of hot topics from work from home, and I'd really like to get your opinion on this, is all of a sudden, through the media and that we saw balance and the lack of balance. So we've got people working from home now, and all of a sudden, the boundaries go out the window and people just fatigued, and there's just no balance in that. And I think why I bring it up now is we are kind of, or were ahead of the curve in that sense, because it's our entire model. So what are your thoughts on the lack of balance, as that's sort of become an issue itself with the pandemic?
Yeah, balance is a tricky one, right? Yeah, I've sort of been watching a lot of videos and podcasts of really high performers, people who are like, the 1% of their game, sports athletes and stuff. And they're like, there's no such thing as balance, right? If I want to be the best that I am, like, I'm going to dedicate all my time to this, and everything else has to take the back burner. And there's obviously, there is that outcome, and you definitely see it in some of these big corporate environments, the Googles and the Amazons, where you really have to put it in 100% of the time and put in the effort if you want to make it to the top, because it's super competitive. But I think, again, that is for the 1%ers. And for the rest of us, it's understanding that balance means everything's working in sync. And I think there's a little bit too much focus on the word work-life balance, and rather just having life balance. And work is a part of your life. And, if you don't have to work, good on you. But every one of us are completing some sort of job, and that has to be part of your overall picture, and understanding that to have balance, you probably need to understand what's important to you, but also you have to understand that every single portion of your life needs to be working well. So you lose balance if you're doing a bad job at work, because now your life's out of balance. You do lose balance if you're doing a bad job with your kids, or with your spouse, or with your exercise or your passion. you have to find a place where you can balance all of those items and perform well in each one of them. And then you'll feel like you have balance in your life. And people who feel like they don't have balance, they're always going to, topple between them, too much time at home, too much time at work, rather than understanding that this is my work time and I'm going to do my best possible job. This is my home time and I'm going to do my best possible job. And if people focused in on that, I feel like that a lot more people will feel a lot more satisfied with their lives, and people would also feel a lot happier because, things are working.
I think, now's a good time to point out, I mean, it's you have a young family, 2 little boys who I'm sure keep you on your toes, and you're an avid runner. Protea has just introduced the wellness program, which we're very excited about. So I think you're the one to beat there. But with all of that going on, like I say, with the young family, something's got to give. No? I mean,
Yeah, I don't think so. So I sort of average around about 60 hours of work a week. Somewhere in that 56 to 60, sort of where I try to keep myself, and I try to be very disciplined by not going over 60 and sort of understanding where that comes from. I exercise every day of the week at the moment, at least 15 minutes a day, be that some strength work, I go for a run, or I jump on the exercise bike. It could include hiking or walking with the kids as well. I make sure I spend time with my 3 and 5-year-old every single day. I make sure I find time to talk to my wife and, fulfill everything I needed that. I pack lunches for the kids on a daily basis. That's 5 days a week. And I cook dinner at least 4 days a week as well. So I find opportunities to sort of touch everything that's important to me, which is, my passion of running, making sure I look after myself so I don't drop dead tomorrow by exercising. I'm putting in the effort of the work and making sure I put forward the best foot for Protea. I get time with the family. I'm making sure that I'm being as good of a father as I can to my children. And then just doing things that make me feel like I'm contributing to the household. And I feel like when all of those are working, which I can say right now, they all currently are working really well, I feel very, very balanced. I tend to sort of slip up a little bit on the exercise side. So if I lose balance, that tends to be where I miss out on, and I don't really lose the other. So I guess I prioritize that the least. If something has to give, it's probably sleep. I probably don't sleep enough. I average about 5 hours of sleep a night, which is probably not enough, but I'm a pretty good napper. So if I'm ever feeling tired, I'll just grab a 20-minute nap. I fall asleep within 5 seconds. So it's a pretty solid 20 minutes.
Okay, I think just listening to that list puts me to shame, certainly, when I'm happy to toss a coin between my wife and I as to who's going to make supper. But throughout all of that, you haven't mentioned your, I believe it's a passion, your, where do you find time to watch Chelsea play?
That sort of can sometimes be the tricky sort area. One television in the house and kids who want to watch their own shows. But I make time for it. I definitely fit it in. My knowledge of football, soccer is beyond what most people would have even right now that I do all work that time. So I find enough time to keep up to date with all the team movements and the latest transfer news. And, that's part of who I am. And it's really important. And it does, when I have a bad day, it definitely affects my mood. So it is part of who I am, and it just fits in.
And speaking of, how's that fantasy football league? How's that going?
So I play fantasy soccer football, which I'm not really great at. I really do overthink it a little bit. I had an average year for me this year, so I'll take that. I also play fantasy football, American football. I managed 3 teams this year. All 3 made it to the playoffs, and I won 1 championship. So I'm able to manage, fitting that into as well. And I probably have a lot of my friends are like, "How do you know so much about college football?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do a lot of American football reading, right? Like I know what's going on there as well." So I find time for it. It's there's 24 hours in a day, so you can find gaps for all these things.
Okay, one more on the sports thing. Do you follow any South African sports anymore?
I lost interest in rugby quite a while ago. I think, that sport generally has just lost a lot of balance, and it's very, very one-sided. I'll sort of check back in with big tournaments. I still follow cricket. I played for a few years while I was here as well. It's really hard to sort of get those sort of sports here. So I do follow it. I keep track of it. I know sort of what games are going on at the moment. India-New Zealand game, I haven't checked the score yet today. I've sort of seen how the South African team is struggling along, but getting some victories. So yeah, I keep contact as much as I want to. But I also do follow, some more untraditional sports as well, other than following, I follow the NBA, I follow the NFL, NHL, MLS. I follow CrossFit as well. European soccer, I probably keep track of five or six leagues in Europe. I keep track of golf. What else do I keep track of? Obviously, Olympic years. I'm keeping track of most of the Olympic sports, and then being a runner as well, I keep track of both road marathons as well as ultra marathons, as well as scene and results that's going over there, and the FTKs that have been set over the last 18 months.
Okay, then, speaking of golf, did you see we had a little bit of South African representation there with poor Louis coming in second in the US Open? That was quite gut-wrenching.
Yeah, I feel like he was on his way to victory until a friend told me to turn it on, and I turned it on. And so,
now
Louis
we know
Louis can come blame me.
Saying just to wrap it up in terms of Protea and that, what would you say your vision, and it's an obscure question, I mean, very, very open-ended, but if you could sort of describe it, what would you say your vision for Protea is?
Yeah, it's fairly simple. It's just better accounting for everyone, and that's sort of our goal from day one. And it's just finding opportunities to allow people to have really good bookkeeping and accounting information at an affordable price, so that they can make better decisions, so that there is just a better opportunity of having success with their small business. I think a lot of small businesses just lose track of what is going on in their business, and especially on profits and cash flow and what those differences are. So we're trying to make it as accessible as possible in a format that is as least intrusive, but is consistent, accurate, and of high quality and at a good price. And if we just continue to do that, I think we'll continue to succeed.
Fantastic. Thanks, Zane.